So our topic for today is one of the most important biomolecules or macromolecules in living system, and that is the proteins. So the outline for today's topic, we have the definition of proteins, structure of proteins, classification of proteins, functions of proteins, and the sources of proteins. So let's start with the definition of proteins. Now, what is protein? Proteins are large size molecules or macromolecules, or a polymers of structural units called amino acids. So the monomer of protein is amino acids. Now, when there are series of amino acids, we have what we call protein, and these proteins, protein is a polymer and their monomer is amino acids. So proteins are the most abundant organic molecules of the living system. That is basically the presence of carbon in their structure makes them organic. So again, in your organic chemistry, when we say organic, they have the presence of carbon. So they are the most abundant among the macromolecules in living system. So they occur in every part of the cell and constitute about 50% of the cellular dry weight. So again, they are the most abundant among the macromolecules in the cell, which makes up 50% of the dry weight. So the amino acids are held together in a protein by peptide bonds. So the linkage between two amino acids is the peptide bond. So when we have two amino acids, the linkage is the peptide bonds. Amino acids are a group of organic compounds containing two functional groups. We have the amino and carboxyl group. So in your organic chemistry, we have several functional groups, and the protein is composed of amino and the carboxyl group. So protein is formally known as polypeptide. So poly means many or several. Now we have several peptide chains. So they are the long chains of amino acids. So that's why they are polypeptides. The protein is formally known as polypeptides. Proteins is made up of elements such as carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, and sulfur. So proteins, in the structure of protein, we have the most abundant element in their structure is the carbon, that is basically 50 to 55%. The oxygen having 19 to 24%, nitrogen 13 to 19%, hydrogen 6 to 7.3%, and the sulfur is 0.0 to 4%. So actually there are many elements present in the proteins, but they are micro elements. So the five major elements present in the structure of proteins are those mentioned here. So we have, or let's proceed to the structure of proteins. We have first the primary structure, meaning the linear sequence of amino acids forming the backbone of proteins or polypeptides. So as you can see in the figure below, when we say primary structure, we're talking about the linear sequence of amino acids. Primary, linear. Always remember, when we have to talk about the primary structure, they are the linear sequence of amino acids. Next, we have the secondary structure, or the spatial arrangement of protein by twisting of the polypeptide chain. So as you can see in the figure below, secondary structure is a twisted structure. They are twisted in their structure. So in primary, they are linear. Secondary is a twisted structure. Next, we have the tertiary structure. the three-dimensional structure of the functional protein. So when you have this, or when we have a 3D structure of a protein, those are the tertiary structure, like in the figure below. And then we have last, the quaternary structure. Some of the proteins are composed of 2 or more polypeptide chains referred to as subunits. So quaternary structure, we are talking about 2 or more polypeptide chains. So when we have several polypeptide chains, that is quaternary structure. So again, in the structure of proteins, we have primary structure or the linear structure, secondary structure or the twisted structure, tertiary structure or the 3D structure, and then we have quaternary structure or composed of 2 or more polypeptide chains. Okay, so let's proceed to the classification of proteins. We have essential amino acids, conditional amino acids, and non-essential amino acids. Essential amino acids, meaning they cannot be made by the body, meaning they must come from food. So the 9 essential amino acids, we have valine, isoleucine, leucine, lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, tryptophan, and histidine. Next, we have conditional amino acids are usually not essential except in times of illness and stress. So the 8 conditional amino acids are arginine, glutamine, tyrosine, cysteine, glycine, proline, serine, and ornithine. Next, we have non-essential amino acids, meaning that our body can produce the amino acid even if we do not get it from food we eat. So the 3 non-essential amino acids are the alanine, asparagine, and aspartate. So there are 3 classification of proteins. We have essential, conditional, and non-essential amino acids. Next, we have the functions of proteins. There are several functions of proteins. First, we have the structural proteins. They serve as the structural protein, like in the keratin of hair. This protein produced naturally by our body, and it helps keep your hair, skin, nails healthy. Next, we have enzymes or catalytic proteins such as pepsin. Pepsin is an enzyme in stomach that breaks down protein in food digestion. And then we have transport proteins, and the example is hemoglobin, or a protein in the red blood cells that carries oxygen to body organs and tissues and transport carbon dioxide from our organs and tissues back to lungs. Next, we have hormonal proteins, such as insulin. Insulin is a hormone created by pancreas that controls the amount of glucose in bloodstream. And then we have contractile proteins such as actin and myosin, which is basically involved in the muscle contractions. And then we have storage proteins, such as ovalbumin, which is the main protein found in egg white. Next, we have genetic proteins or the nucleoproteins, or a protein linked to nucleic acid, either DNA or RNA. And then we have defense proteins such as immunoglobulins. They are defense proteins because immunoglobulins is an antibody which recognizes a molecule of pathogen called antigen. And then last, we have receptor proteins for hormones and viruses, which receives and transduce signals that may be integrated into biological system. So there are several sources of proteins. There are so many sources of proteins in food, both plant-based and animal-based. So the example of plant-based proteins are the sources are the chickpeas, oats, tofu, brown rice, quinoa, lentils, cashews, peanut butter, almonds, and so on. And then we have animal-based protein. We have egg, Turkey means chicken, prawns, tuna, salmon, pork chop, no, duck, and so on. So those are the sources of proteins, no, based on the Bermuda Dietitians Association 2019. Okay, so that's all for today. These are the references I used in this topic. So before this ends, let's have a short quiz. So, or practice exam. So first, what is most abundant organic molecules of the living system? Again, what is the most abundant organic molecules of the living system? A. Carbohydrates, B. Lipids, C. Nucleic acids, and D. Proteins. The right answer is proteins, letter B. Next, what is the monomer of proteins? A. Monosaccharide, B. Fatty acids, C. Nucleotide, and D. Amino acid. The right answer is letter D. Amino acid. Next, what is the most abundant element in the structure of proteins? A. Carbon, B. Hydrogen, C. Nitrogen, and D. Oxygen. The right answer is letter A. Carbon. Next, number 4, what structure of proteins is the linear sequence of amino acids? A. Primary structure, B. Secondary structure, C. Tertiary structure, and D. Quaternary structure. The right answer is letter A. Primary structure. And then the last, we have actin and myosin are blank. A. Storage proteins, B. Structural proteins, C. Contractile proteins, and D. Hormonal proteins. The right answer is letter C. Contractile proteins. So that's all for today. Thank you for listening and watching.